up, guys? Welcome to Information Operation. I'm Connor Ryan, and we're coming at you from Marquette, Michigan, bringing you your locally sourced ideas, thoughts, and inquiries. Today on the podcast, I sit down with a good friend of mine, Scott Benkarski, and we talk about the essence of meditation and the knowledge that you have within you to apply to everything that you experience. So, without further ado, enjoy the podcast. Scott Benkarski, what's going on, dude? Just getting back from Lower Michigan. How was your time?
Oh, had a nice time. Went and did some biking and rode like the wind
Beautiful.
amongst the trees.
And you rode Glacial Hills?
Glacial Hills, fast and flowy. And the beautiful thing about Glacial Hills was, unlike Marquette, where it's beautiful riding, but there's roots and rocks and the leaves fall and they hide
Right.
the roots and rocks. Glacial Hills is all clean. The trails are just packed tight, and there's no surprises underneath the leaves, and they leave the leaves on the ground, and you can just rip it just like it was summer. So it's a safer kind of fall riding variant where I can keep my shoulder in my socket,
Yep.
kind of thing.
And they're fast trails.
Fast and flowy.
Super slick.
Yep, they're definitely fast.
Cool.
They're beautiful. They have good fluidity, which
Cool.
I appreciate. I enjoy things that have they're efficient and fluid.
Yes.
I seek these things.
Often.
I seek these things in all manner.
Right. In the kiting.
In the kiting, in the biking, in the business, by my being.
Sure.
Hmm.
And will the kiting last into the winter as well?
So the kiting will finish up until the snow falls. I used to, seek, when you're first doing something, you just want to do it all the time. You know what I mean? And now I'm a little more selective about the conditions. So I won't go out when there's limited snow on the ice and I have a potential of getting hurt. I'll wait till there's a good dump
Yeah.
and get out there and have a good time with it, and wait for some decent wind. And otherwise, get cross country skiing and other activities.
Right.
Throw the frisbee in the dome, which is pretty cool.
Definitely. No wind.
So basically, looking for things that are optimal and leaving suboptimal things behind.
Yeah, efficiency is the key.
Mm.
How do you, how do you stay so active?
Just passionate about it, right?
Have you always been that way?
Active always, but not cleanly active, right? Putting energies in the wrong things, creating inefficiencies, creating karma, whatever you want to call it, in one's life until refining that rajas, that activity, in putting it into things that are valuable
Right.
for the body, for the temple, for the being, proper direction of energy.
Sure.
Right? So I've not always been that efficient at it, and I feel like I'm getting better, and there's always room for improvements,
Right.
and it becomes more beautiful along the way.
Finding more balance in action.
More balance, more efficiency, more beauty. Hmm.
And I don't know, for people, a lot of people ask me, or a lot of people might misunderstand the meaning of karma. Could you explain that a little more?
So karma and sin are closely related, okay? And in material reality, we if we inadvertently mistake an experience that we have, which will often happen because we have an egoic preference for how an experience is going to come out. So we taint the way that we view it, and we don't witness it truly. And then, so we've misunderstood it. Now we're acting on this misunderstanding, and we're creating karma because we're acting not in accordance with our dharma, or our rightness, or our efficiency. We're acting in accordance with illusion.
Sure.
Right, and which is darkness and ignorance, right?
Sure.
So as such, this is the essence of the biblical version of sins, right?
Yes.
So the sin and karma are the same thing. In a material reality, all things balance out, all things equalize. So sooner or later, you're going to pay your karmic bill,
I was gonna say, so how does that balance now?
right? It balances in lifetimes. It balances through lifetimes, through incarnations. And people have an opportunity. Every being has an opportunity to balance that and to come into grace, right?
Sure.
But to get into grace, to fall into grace, one has to balance their karmic load.
Right.
Pay their dues.
Right. And this is something bigger than the earth. This is something that is universal laws of karma.
Yeah, I mean, the scope whatever your mind can fathom. There is the scope.
Sure.
You know.
And things, worldly things fuel karma, even though it's not a worldly law. Do you know what I mean? Like anger, like fear, like doubt will fuel illusion in order to act out of sync with karma.
It, it,
And those are
karma,
worldly
karma.
things
Yeah, those are
affecting,
illusory,
right?
right? Fear and doubt and all those things. Once one sees truth and light and reality,
Yeah.
they can properly discern what is illusory, which is fear and doubt. Those things go away.
Right.
So then one sees that they're living in unreality, fear, doubt, illusion.
Even
And
pride, even things that seem good, like desire.
well, I mean, the proper type of desire. I mean, it's written that, in many spiritual doctrines that the only kind of desire you can have is a desire to know truth or desire to know God or the ultimate or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
That's the only proper desire, and that everything else then stems from that. You see, everything else cascades beautifully into place in one's life if one is seeking that high point,
The higher truth.
that higher truth, and then all is made manifest.
Through balance.
Yep.
Through balanced action
Yep.
and intention.
Yep. Seek ye first the kingdom, and then all things shall be added unto you. That's the Christian variant that's in the Bible.
And these things are also subtle, right? Like,
We're talking about, I mean, we're talking about metaphysics, right? We're talking about subtle dimensions. We're talking about things that are experienced but not seen or tangible. And that's the problem that mankind has with these things, right? Is they can't touch it. It's only accessible by going inward,
yep,
and by going inward, then you can experience it. You still can't touch it. You still can't bring it back to material reality, to the space, but you become it, and then you operate in that fashion in the spirit.
right.
And by walking in the spirit, now you're walking in a higher variant of yourself, and you've transcended a lot of the material law, the material aspects. You don't transcend the material law, but you're less likely to fall into the various traps.
Yes.
Right.
And letting go, essentially renouncing. It's not just letting go into space. It takes some conscious effort and focus and intention of where it's going.
It it is helpful to have a single point of foci.
Right.
Okay, your question is, or your statement has a couple of facets to it, right? It is beneficial to be able to let something go into nowhere, and to have complete trust in a free fall into the unknown, right? And that's the essence of truly letting go of something.
Is that more bhakti?
That is more bhakti driven. That is
Sure.
definitely a love and a trust and a
Yeah.
faith kind of.
Leap of faith kind of
Exactly.
people.
Mm-hmm. Less scientific, less show it to me, less yana.
Intellectual.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And how does it become easy to like live in that state of subtle fear or subtle doubt? Separation from ultimate trust.
Well, there's a couple of examples. The first is, a person who's ever had any experience in quitting, say, smoking, is blown away when they realize they were a 2-pack a day smoker, and that they can escape that. They can't even fathom not smoking, and then once they've quit smoking, they can't even fathom how they were a 2-pack a day smoker. So
Operating in that.
yeah, you build a tolerance, right? So how does a tolerance get built? When we're young, and this is the essence of the spiritual versions and some of the new age kind of doctrines about healing the inner child, right?
Sure.
So we go back through meditation, through self-reflection, we go back and we take a look at who we are, and the inner algorithms that run our being and how we make our decisions and whatnot. And when we look back at those inner algorithms of who we are and why we make the decisions that we think, we begin to see the reasons why we think this way. And we might dig up ideas from the past, aspects of experiences in the past where we have incorrectly made a determination about something.
Yeah.
And so you start adding up incorrect,
I need this.
I need
I
this, or I want
need.
to experience it this
Yeah.
way, and I don't want to experience it the other way.
Have expectations here.
Exactly. So expectation builds upon expectation builds upon expectation, and you compound that by actually selling parts of yourself to get the expectation. So you
Years.
sell parts of your soul. Right now, we're talking about many, many years of just wrong. The foundation of the pyramid has been built incorrectly. Right, so you reach your 20s or whatever, or your 30s, and you take a look at who you are, and you say, "Holy cow! I've got to get back in here and rework some foundational business." Right. The
That's
beautiful thing about that is that if you're willing to do it, if you're willing to dive into yourself and get into the foundations and say, "I'm responsible for the external world that I'm experiencing. I'm responsible for everything. I blame nobody except for my own decisions. I take full responsibility." You are offered grace. That's where grace comes into play. So you don't have to work real hard after that to undo everything henceforth,
right.
but grace comes into play and heals it instantly.
Right. More so work from here. Work from where you're at, not
Work from where
from,
you are.
yeah, not digging into anything in the past.
Well, you visit the thing in the past,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you don't have to visit it and then now it's some big burden that you carry in the bag with you around forever, trying to bringing it out, trying to unscrew it and make it right again. You go, you visit it, right? This is the essence of confessing sins,
Yeah.
okay? So you go, you visit this thing, or it's revealed unto you, right? By a deeper part of you. So a deeper part of you that you commune with reveals unto you a wrong thought, a sinful thing. This thing is presented, and you have an opportunity to take ownership for it and to basically confess your sin. If you confess your sin and you realize this is not a thing I want to do henceforth, you truly release yourself from it, from the old pattern. You no longer want it as a part of you. If you can do that, henceforth, boom, the karma is instantly wiped out.
Right.
Near instantly. It depends on. There's a number of factors involved
Sure.
in terms of the
How
metaphysics
long
of it.
it's
And
built,
yeah,
it
there's a
might
lot
come
of
back.
how far you are into the grace. I would say
So this is done through meditation, and I
there's
think
only one way.
when a lot of people think meditation, it's sitting in quiet space and letting go of your thoughts. Uh, would you say that? I mean, what you're talking about is a lot more complex than sitting in a silent space and letting go of thoughts.
I'm talking about the metaphysics behind what happens when you sit in a quiet space and let go of your thoughts,
Yes.
right? I'm not talking about the things that are being spoken right now are not uh, necessarily what everybody's going to experience or realize. Some people are more prone to see the mechanics of what transpires. So I speak of the mechanics of what transpires, but you don't have to know the mechanics to have it work.
Sure. Because it can happen um, for a different system, it takes different mechanics.
You don't need to understand how it happens. That's the letting go of it,
Okay.
right? But
Right.
to some, it is shown how it actually works.
Sure.
Whether or not it matters for one individual versus another to understand the mechanics is,
Sure.
per person, because everybody's got their different flavor, right?
Yeah. And in your unfoldment, you found that understanding was beneficial.
It is in my being to understand things both from a metaphysical standpoint and a scientific standpoint,
Yeah.
and to merge the two, and
Right.
to be able to use words to deliver them into material reality. That is an essential thing.
To bring it full circle.
To take that which is non tangible from another place and to put it into words and bring it into this space.
How long did it take for you to be able to share it openly?
Looking for people to share it openly with, because the first thing that happens when you experience another aspect, a deeper aspect of yourself, or you open this door, or you lift this veil,
Yeah.
right, or you walk to the other side, or you're propelled to the other side, right? So, for instance, for me, I was propelled to the other side by a chest impact that caused a momentary, like near-death experience that had me questioning the nature of existence. Right?
Yeah.
Blip, you're on the other side. Blip, you're back. But where you were somewhere else.
Yep.
Right? So then you have to do some work, right? to figure out like where was I, what's going on, and am I crazy? You know what I mean? Nobody else can understand what I'm talking about. Likely at this point, depending on who you are, right, and how you've created yourself, you may not be finding yourself in the company of the holy, as it were, or the divine, or the higher vibrational things, right? So you're not going to have other people to talk to,
Yeah.
right? So and that's kind of how the system is set up. You have to trust yourself. You have to fortify a bond with your higher self first. Then what you have fortified, what you have developed inside about fortifying a bond with your higher self and with truth will come to pass in the outside,
Yeah.
right? Then you'll be afforded opportunities to engage with other individuals who have experienced such things and live in a higher space, as it were, a higher amplitude,
Yeah.
higher vibrational spaces, they
Yeah.
might call it, and have the opportunity to then interact with those beings, right, on a regular basis. And then you'll be, of course, tested. Can you sustain
By yourself.
interacting with exactly? Yeah, I mean, it's the only way it happens.
Yeah. And in a lot of these texts, it is written that a teacher will be shown, right?
Hmm.
So, did you have that?
I had no physical format teachers outside of the fact that everybody, the external world is always a teacher in all forms to each
Yeah.
individual,
It's not just
right?
people
So
either.
did a guru come along and say, okay, here are the higher things? No, yes and no, not in the material sense, but in the non-physical sense.
Right.
So my personal teachers were non-physical in nature
Right.
and visited me.
Right. And would you say that people are mistaken who seek that out? I need to find a teacher in order to attain.
No, many people need to have a physical incarnate teacher. That's why there are individuals who can offer, who are materially here to offer assistance to those who can handle. Like, not everybody's ready to handle interaction with non-physical entities,
Yeah.
non-physical teachers, right?
Right.
So they need a tangible bridgeway,
Yep.
I guess. And then ultimately, though, the the um, the Eastern yogis would say the guru is inside, right? So if there's a teacher on the outside, all the teacher does is teach for a while to teach you to go back and look inside.
Yeah.
And then when you're done with the teacher on the outside, you realize the teacher on the outside was just telling you to go back and acting on your behalf,
Sure. So these are, high spiritual concepts, and I'm just kind of curious to where this differs from religion, or does it at all?
It does differ from religion. It is both similar and different than religion. It is similar in that the essence of all religions is the same. It speaks in different names, in languages, in concepts about the same essential thing of pointing you back into yourself, that the highest part of you is inside of yourself, and to look within and don't get lost on the outside only,
Sure.
right? To balance yourself out by inward and outward.
Always?
Go ahead.
It seems like sometimes in religion that, God is external. God is not you, in some religious texts.
Hmm. Many a religion, especially Christianity, so Hinduism would say, you realize the God within you, right?
Yeah.
And then speaks of three different types of being, men, God, and asuras. So men being the material man, the demonic, kind of like lower level forms of human existence that are kind of like inertializing and pulling humanity downward, and then the
Sure.
gods that are kind of like the realized beings who are pulling humanity upward,
But are
right?
they separate?
I don't understand.
Are those three classes of people in Hinduism, are they separate?
Uh, Everybody has the opportunity to find themselves in one
Okay.
of those places.
Understood.
And not only that, one can swim up and down through those spaces, but one would typically find themselves in a middle to higher tier after having certain understandings revealed.
Right.
Understanding the mechanics of how things work, one doesn't want to do any demonic or dark things. You get away from doing ignorant acts.
Sure. And
So
most,
then Christianity would say, you are not God. There's only one God. You're not God.
yeah.
You know, and the key here is to through meditation to look within, and so one would say, like, what's the truth? Look within, find out for yourself.
Yeah. That's the ultimate answer.
Hmm.
Because, a lot of these religious groups do emphasize the importance of non-separation, correct?
When you say non-separation, non-separation from other other religions, or what do you mean?
Yeah, other people in general.
Religion's an interesting thing because it has a lot of certain religions have a lot of they've been tainted by the ideas of man.
It is man's creation.
It was originally uh, spoken very clearly to prophets and then bastardized along the way and manipulated for control purposes.
Hmm.
Certain religions. Hmm.
Definitely. So what is this?
What is what?
You said, this is how it's different, but how is this the same as religion?
Okay, so there are pathways to get to a place, right? And there might be a space in the woods, and it's this beautiful uh, Eden, right, in the
Yeah.
woods, and there might be 30 different pathways to the center of this beautiful Eden acreage in the middle of the woods, right? The religious systems are the pathways. They
Yeah.
are not the Eden, right?
Yes.
So the pathways, you transcend the pathway. Once you've taken the pathway, then you have to let go of the pathway to experience the Eden, right? So if you're following Christianity, you experience Christianity until you become Christianity and then let go of it completely. And then you find the Eden. You find the place.
Why don't we see more people doing this?
So Sri Ramakrishna would say that it's for two things: lust and gold. So money and sexual lust. Most people are stuck in the power chakra realm
Yeah.
and can't never even make it up to the heart chakra. So you got most of humanity, and we're at a precipice right now. Some are breaking through into the heart chakra realm, and there's a wave that's kind of heading in that direction. It happened in the '60s as well, right? But it
Sure.
was squashed. It's a whole nother story. So the power chakra on up. So sexuality, I think sexuality and money and power are the things that life has to offer, and there's nothing beyond it, right? So once an individual satisfies these desires, these lower desires, and realizes that there's still a hole in them, it's not doing it, right? This is the essence of midlife crisis and whatnot.
Yeah. Filling the hole with
Exactly. You
something
fill
that.
it and you're still hungry. You fill it again and you're still hungry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's only one thing that actually that fills it and seals it up. It's to become whole.
Yeah.
It's to consume the other part of you that's missing. That's missing.
Yeah.
As Shel Silverstein says.
And we talked about living in fear pretty briefly, but I think it's more subtle than most people think. It was for me anyway. When looking at fear, it's fear of things that are normal to fear, right? Like death. I'm attached to my life, so I fear death,
Mm.
right? I fear being alone. I fear being unsuccessful in
Hmm. These are
quotations.
macro fears, right? These are gross fears that many people experience on the surface level and are easily identified, right?
Yeah,
Right.
and are pretty standard,
Let's
right?
call them standard, sure.
Common.
You can categorize them into some standard fears, right?
And those are also, some of the hardest to get over. You know, fears of, um, not getting a good grade on the next test. They go quick. You get rid of those in meditation
Sure,
pretty
sure.
quickly. But when it comes to fear of maybe losing personality in all this, or fear of um, dying,
Yep.
or fear of, you know, not living in this higher truth that you're here to do anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of variants of fear, and they all have to be squashed and overcome. Yep. One has to live fearlessly, completely,
Completely.
completely.
Yeah.
I mean, the great work is to squash those fears, to eliminate the illusions um, within oneself.
It blows me away that that there's people out there that will reject somebody who says, "I discount nothing."
There's a lot of ignorance out there, and there's a lot of the ego, right,
Uh-huh.
does not want anything. It has high preferences, right?
Yeah,
So
what does the ego like?
whatever it's comfortable with, right? It loves comfort,
Sure.
right? It doesn't want to know what the unknown is. It's scared of the unknown. It's identified with itself.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. It's not identified with not itself.
Right.
It's identified with itself. Transcending it is the key. And so
Yeah.
you talk about these things that you mentioned, right? About fears, right? And I think that the essence of what it seemed like you were driving at is there's macro fears, right? But there's also subtle variants of those fears, right? They run deep in our being. And it takes a lot of work to dig way down and root them out
Yeah.
and replace them with understanding and love and trust, to get back to understanding, love, and trust, and to remove all form and fashion of fear. You can speak to that. You've been doing this work,
Definitely.
right? You've
Yeah.
been digging very deep, and you know how deep they go, and they just and the roots are.
They keep going.
But there is an end. Know that.
Yeah. Completion.
hmm
Whole.
You run into a maintenance mode, right?
Yeah.
Once you weed everything up, you want to make sure the garden's tilled and tidy, right?
And another thing that helps kind of console me in that is that the obstacles are the best things that ever happened to you. Right?
Right.
It's hard to see that in the moment when you're present, and then hindsight is 2020. Right? You realize like, wow, if that wouldn't have happened to me, the worst thing that has ever happened to me,
It's one of the most beautiful things. It gave me the biggest opportunity.
it gave me the biggest opportunity to
And
grow
that's
from.
that's that's what a wizard does, okay? A wizard alchemizes things, right? Consciously. A wizard takes perspective and says, I'm not going to view an event as a negative because I'm not living only in my ego.
Yeah.
I know my ego, I understand it, but I have subdued it, and I am in control of my ego. The self is in control of the ego. The ultimate being
Yeah.
of me is in control of the ego. The ego does not control it, right? So I can view an event not from an egoic fear-based standpoint, but instead I choose every single time to view an event as what is the benefit of this?
Right.
Every single time, right?
Right. And some people are, you know, looking back and saying that's going to be hard to get over,
hmm
you know, and I find it even more fulfilling when in the present moment, as something in quotations shitty is happening,
hmm
you can stare it in the face and be like, wow, I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to grow from this and achieve higher heights because of it
You train yourself to do that. How do you train yourself to do that?
presently.
Through
Well,
what tool? Through what mechanism?
going back in,
It's meditation,
right? Going
right?
back
It's
inward.
stillness, right?
Yeah,
To look at yourself, to look
sure.
at what you've created. Who am I? How have I created myself? Because we've made these decisions constantly through
And
our life.
during the event that is taking place, you know, your world could be, you know, falling down around you or what have you, and you might not be able to meditate, but with what you've learned through meditation and what you've learned by seeing this unfold many times where you've gotten burned and then you look back and you're like, I'm glad that happened. After a while, it seems that you just learn to appreciate it,
You walk in the spirit. Right.
essentially.
So no long. And that's the essence of what I'm saying. Like, how do you train yourself to be able to, in the moment, view an experience as a benefit and not view it as maybe a benefit, maybe a detriment? Because what happens is people go from the progress goes a little something like this through meditation and reflection. Okay. Introspection, reflection, and then deeper meditation. There's lots of tiers and depths to meditation. But anyway, stillness,
Sure.
right? Bring it within. Through doing that on a regular basis, we watch what we've done in the material world, and we say, how would I handle that? We turn it over to the ultimate. We say, how did I do? Right?
Sure.
How many people are willing to do that? You know what I mean? Say, I want to know how I did. And say there's something higher than me that can give me some feedback on how I'm doing living as a being, right? And so we bring it to the table, we offer it on the altar, and we say, how did I do today in this circumstance, that circumstance? So then we learn, right? And as we learn and as we practice, right? That's the essence of practice meditation, just like lifting weights and whatnot, train
Yoga,
yourself,
what have you.
right? Exactly. By doing that, now you can walk in that place, and it's at the essence is walking meditation. There's no need to go back and process things because you're processing them on the fly because you've eliminated all your baggage, so you're living truly in the moment. You're not living in some false variant of the
Every
moment.
moment, right? And
Exactly.
this used to be easy for
Right.
me
Because
on
if
a
you're not
moment.
living in the moment, you're not living in the moment, then you're going to have an experience that you're having. You're not going to be able to view it correctly because you're truly not in the moment to view it correctly.
Right.
Right?
Thinking about grocery shopping or what you need
Whatever.
to
Or you're
cook
stuck
food.
on some wrong idea that you had from an experience from 3 days ago or
Any kind of
whatever.
illusion of separation.
Exactly. Fear. I'm lost in a fear from a thing, whatever.
So this becomes easy in doing things like mountain biking, snowboarding, things that are freeing of mind and body. Everything's kind of synced up as one. Decision making is no longer a chore or hindered by fear, but you're more so in the moment entirely. And you're saying that all of life can be such a flow state.
Ultimately, all of life can be at such a flow state, and you can be at pure peace.
Yeah.
Right? You transfer the concept in your mind of that material world out there as being separate from me and out to get me potentially, and it's me against the world, that kind of idea, and I'm scared of everything out there too. That's another part of me. It wants me to be successful. It wants me to enjoy life. It wants me to be at peace. And when you start believing that and viewing that and choosing to view that way and releasing old ideas, your world literally changes out there.
It's inviting, and it changes your physiology too. It's
Love's
physical.
always inviting, yes.
It's physical, it's mental, it's spiritual.
Your physical being literally changes in meditation. And we could talk about the various densities of the being, right? So we've got the material being, and then we've got the energetic being and the emotional being,
Yeah.
then the causal being, right? So we've got these various densities of layers, right? When you go into the causal being, right, the place of why am I doing these things? Who am I? Why do I have this idea? Where did it come from? And you change that causally, you change your emotional being.
Right. It gets kind of
It cascades
a
down.
cascade
Right?
effect,
This
right?
is this is the as above, so below. This is the seek ye first the kingdom, and all things shall be added unto you, because you do that work, that high work, and everything
It's
underneath
trickle
it
down.
changes. The trickle down, right? So your emotions change, your energetic body changes, and then the physical ailments that were manifesting from wrong concepts are released from the body because they're no longer needed there as a sign to tell you that you're in sin
Right.
or that you're off the mark or
To
whatever, right?
in order
Who's
to
yeah,
restore balance.
in order to restore balance, right? So what is that sign? So a lot of people say like, why would the ultimate hurt me? Why would God hurt me or something like that, right? That's you're doing it,
Sure.
okay? Responsibility. You're doing it.
Sure.
Your thoughts are doing it,
Sure.
right? That thing that you have happening to you is happening because of you, and when you own things like that, you have that kind of sovereignty, then you have control
That
by
brings
letting it go. It's an interesting
that
paradox.
brings up two really fascinating thoughts I came across. One, watching this film with Morgan Freeman, he was looking into the brain's reaction to um, concentration on the ultimate, the universe, or God, whatever you want to call it,
Yep.
and the frontal lobe activation,
Hmm.
and what
The
they
the ansha.
right,
Hmm.
right. So they had brain scans
Yep.
um, of Morgan Freeman thinking about God in whatever context that he does,
Yep.
and the frontal lobe was lit up.
He seems like he probably,
He's all right,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So the frontal cortex lit right up, and then they did a resting, and it's just blank, right? Then they had an atheist come in, somebody who doesn't believe in anything, and asked him to think about God, think about the universe. He thought about it, but the frontal cortex didn't light up. He didn't believe it.
Faith.
Right.
Hmm.
So without the belief, you can think about something all that you want, but if you don't truly believe it, it
So
doesn't
then
even
that, so then
exist.
that, then that, that's a good reason for somebody. I'll play like quote unquote devil's advocate here. You got somebody who's early into meditation, wants to change themselves, but says, prove it to me. Like, is it on the scientific side of things? Now you're kind of stuck, right? Because in order to experience the ultimate, you have to have belief and faith, right?
Yes.
So that's the key, is that letting go, that release, that belief that there's something bigger out there.
Right. What they are saying is essentially the key to getting past the door that they're talking about.
In what regard?
Saying that prove it to me. That is the locked door in front of them,
Exactly.
right?
Hmm.
That is the key. that they need to unlock is to let go of that there that
Right.
they're
And
speaking of.
and usually an individual like that will haven't even really tried meditation, right? Because I
Sure.
mean, if you try it, and you just try and still yourself, and you sit in front of a candle for 30 minutes
On
in
a
front of a
regular
can,
basis.
30 minutes in front of a candle
Really.
one time, and you will be hooked. You'll be shown, you'll be shown
Yeah.
what the potentials are.
It was a different process for me.
Hmm.
It took a lot of integration through yoga to break a lot of those walls down initially. I wouldn't have been able to sit down in front of a candle for 30 minutes without the practice,
Without the hatha
without the
practice,
hatha practice.
sure. I mean, everybody's got a different path,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And that started with 5 minutes listening to Lori's guided meditations, you know.
Yeah.
And that just, it continued to amp up to 30 minutes. Mostly I was laying on my back, falling asleep to them, um, and then didn't start upright meditation till about March.
Hmm.
Yeah, but
There was
definitely,
something holding you back from it.
definitely,
Hmm.
definitely.
There was a physical manifestation, if I recall.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I broke my back mountain biking in Copper Harbor,
Hmm.
so it
And
was a belief that I had that I was limited.
an attachment to an idea,
Yep,
right?
a delusion.
An illusion, a delusion, a fearful thing,
Yep,
right? That was holding you from holding a posture that could get you through the
access.
thing. Hmm.
Correct. And that limited me until moving in here in July, right? Because I was still in a hammock,
I suppose
meditating in a hammock.
it appeared that you were making things happen
Sure,
whilst in the woods.
definitely. You just brought something up. Can we make anything happen?
I mean, are you talking about miracles?
That was a question I wanted to ask. No, just in general, like a lot of people, a lot of motivated, um, self-sufficient people will say, you got to make things happen.
We're talking about, all right, so you're talking about making things happen through force,
Yes.
right? So this is like the tail wagging the dog, right? Or just going at it from the back end, right? You can make anything happen, but there's a cost involved, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, if you want to, I use this description, these two descriptions on a regular basis. You can go out and get a suntan, and you like the way that you look with the suntan, but how hard is it to hold that tan, right? Your skin pigment is naturally a certain thing, and it's difficult to hold that, right? So you can make anything happen. You can make as much money as you want doing it wrongly, but you're going to expend a lot of effort doing it,
Yeah.
and you're also racking up tons of karma doing it improperly along the way,
Sure.
right? So then the other description is your body's made to be a certain way, right?
Yeah.
You have a certain kind of body, and some people will take a lot of supplements and everything to push their body outside of the bounds and lift weights and become push themselves well outside of the bounds of what their frame is capable of.
Sure.
But if they stop doing all those things, they come back to their natural state,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
you can strive very hard, but what are you getting really, right?
Yeah. Contemporary.
It's a temporary,
It's a
it's a temporary,
temporary. It's a
this is the
Band-Aid.
essence of passing pleasure or perennial joy that's discussed in the Eastern philosophies, right? So passing pleasures are things that you seek on a regular basis, just tiny hits, right? That kind of like some
Yeah.
M&Ms or,
Money, sex,
uh,
food,
yep, gluttony,
all the
look at all
stuffs.
the deadly sins,
Sure.
right? If you really want to do it. Otherwise,
Sure.
just look at the virtues, and the virtues will cancel out the deadly sins. I used to say, work on the deadly sins. Now it's like, man, just focus on the positives. So like focus on the virtues, and all those deadly sins will wash themselves away.
There's something to be said about that too, because when you start to focus on what you might not be doing or get nervous about
Hmm.
something that might happen, it
Hmm.
manifests somehow.
One's fearful because the universe doesn't care whether or not you it cares mainly what you're thinking about, not so much about whether or not you want it. You know what I mean? The fact that you're constant, if you're thinking about a certain negative concept and fearful of the fact that it may not, or that you wouldn't want it to happen to you, a disease or something like that, you're going to bring it into your life regardless.
Sure.
Partially because you're just thinking about it consistently and constantly using your power of witness, your power of focus, right, to put it there. The universe doesn't care yes or no, right? It's just hearing like this thing, right? So it comes to pass in your life.
To
You
show
know?
you.
And it also comes to show you, to teach you an example. So what is it? Is it out there teaching you something? You're teaching you something.
Yeah.
You're sending out the message to the
So
universe,
it's
to the
both.
larger part of you, to send back a message to you, to teach you not to be fearful like that,
It's both.
right? To not to believe that the universe is out to conspire against you,
Right.
you know?
It's internal as well as external. Equally.
Both,
Right?
constantly, yes.
And they're both infinite.
This is well, as far as we know, we don't know the end of the material universe, and certainly, I don't think anybody could say they found the end of the internal
No.
universe.
Quantum physics is the small, right? And astrology is the large. And there's a question mark at both ends.
Sure, astronomy, astrology,
Did I say astronomy?
yeah, it
Kind of
doesn't
same
matter.
thing,
I
right?
don't even know.
Sure. So workshops this week.
Yeah, that's going to be groovy.
What's that all about?
Well, we were kind of like chatting about that last night, and the idea is we've been having the workshops for, I think this is the fifth year now.
Yep.
And so the idea is we're talking about concepts here that maybe aren't discussed at your local coffee shop, might have be not currently, right? It's not currently out there in the paradigm. Like you're just not going to go having these conversations typically, and this is a safe place where that kind of understanding, that kind of reality is being sought by individuals, right? So
Sure.
it's like liken it to a raft, right? If there's illusion out there and suffering, and somebody has like a little bit of a snap to it and says, I got a glimpse of something. There's something bigger. You know what I mean? I don't have to be in this wallowing in this pit of whatever. I
Yeah.
want to
It's
relieve myself of
pain.
these things, right? So they begin to do some work, and this would be a good group to go to whilst doing that work for support and communion, basically to commune in truth, a community of truth,
Sure.
to share a concept of reality that is not tainted by a preference one way or another,
Right.
but is just the truth.
Right. And some people might get confused. They're the wrong kind of people. But you just said commune. Like, this is a
It does,
commune.
that's fine. You know what I mean?
Right?
If somebody's offended by that, that's okay.
Yeah.
The essence, I'm talking about the etymology of the word to commune,
Yes.
right? To commune is to share an understanding, to share a vision of a thing, right? To be able to exchange ideas about a reality or a way, right?
Openly.
Well, I mean, any way, right? You can
Sure.
communicate physically and non-physically or whatever.
Sure.
Yep. But this is to commune in truth, right?
Definitely.
Not to commune and conspire in untruth, right?
That happens.
Of course it does.
Plenty.
It's all over the place.
Right.
It's top down pretty ugly right now out there.
Yeah, you mentioned a precipice. What do you mean by that?
We're at a point where material reality doesn't seem to be pleased with everything that it's got and all the beauty that's out there, and fear is running rampant, and fear seems to be running amok, right? And essentially,
Big examples that you can think of right off the top of your head.
as Americans, we've bought on credit for a long time. I mean, not physically, but karmically. You know what I mean? We've
Ah,
foregone looking at ourselves closely. You know what I mean? And we've taken, and everybody's responsible for it. We're all part of the whole. And now we just sweep it under the rug over and over again, right? Now it's not under the rug. Now it's right up at the top. There's a manifestation at the top that shows exactly what America's, all about currently. And it's unfortunate. And so there's a struggle to own that top, and to take away from that top and bring up another variant of reality, right? But as long as there's that contention, and everybody's looking at differences, right, and not at similarities,
right,
right, then we're not going to have peace, right?
right,
Peace happens when we look at what are the similarities between the left and the right, right?
right. And us in other countries,
All things,
right?
all things, similarities. Similarities equals love, right? Differences equals typically equals fear. Differences, focusing on differences can be helpful
Separation.
in terms of in saying, you know what, I have a flavor of truth, you have a flavor of truth,
Hmm.
right? But essentially, the similarity is focus on truth.
Right. The mountaintop is the same place.
Exactly.
We're on different sides,
Right. Whatever.
different spots in the climb,
We
what have
talk
you.
about it, or we be it, we become it. We emanate it differently,
Sure. And
but
it's
essentially it's the same thing.
right.
Hmm.
And analogies do a certain amount of justice, right? Bringing physical explanations to these kind of ideas.
In what regard?
I vividly remember the analogy that you had mentioned about the water, right? When you look across a still body of water and you see the other side, it perfectly reflects off the water, and you can't tell where that line is on the other side of the
Hmm.
body of water. It's a perfect reflection of purity,
Purity and peace and stillness and
right? So
mhm.
if the other side is your soul, is the water reflecting your soul,
Mhm.
or is there ripples?
Is there cross currents of wind and egoic preferences and desires across the surface, creating ripples
Sure,
so you can't see, or others can't see, or you can't experience your true
sure.
your true self.
Yep. And I've
Hmm.
heard, a similar analogy with water, and it contradicts that one, but a still body of water stagnates.
Hmm.
It gets old, and it gets decayed or diseased, right? If it doesn't have fresh water moving through it, or new insight,
Hmm.
or new things obtained, or new lessons brought through the channel, then it will become a nasty swamp.
So this is, I think the Hindu variants of Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva speak well to this, right? So you don't want you want activity and inactivity in balance.
Yeah,
Okay, you don't want to be all ragistic, or have tons of rahas. So you're constantly doing externally, but you don't ever take a moment to sit in stillness, which technically is tamestic. You know what I mean? It's not doing anything, right? And allow yourself to steep in what you've done outside, right?
yeah, that's interesting. A lot of people see Tamas and they say bad.
Exactly. But
No,
you can pick the divine out of anything, right? That's the thing. Well, you always want to be able to pick the divine aspect out of each thing. You want to know what its negative attributes are so you can avoid them.
right?
But if
So,
you really focus on the divine, again, the positivity, the similarities, the things then all the other stuff just falls away.
right. The truth of it is, it's all of it. You have all of them.
Well, at all times, different mixes. So what we speak of is a nice balance of the mix of those things that creates stability and activity amongst those things that creates a placidity,
Hmm.
right? Or even a steady ascent, as we've talked about. You know,
Yes. If you view it that way, if you view your life if your life is waves of, oh, this is a bad time, this is a hard
sure,
time, and this is a great time, and this is bliss, and then you're just going up and down in those waves,
you sure will.
you
Yep.
will, and you'll continue to do so.
Yep. And you will do it to yourself because you as you're the core true being inside of you seeks balance. So if you spike yourself, you will pull yourself into a trough, right? To balance out the spike that you had until you figure it out. Why are you doing it? Because you're teaching yourself a lesson.
Sure. And your life isn't truly a steady increase or a steady climb, ascent,
It's just more like a
progression
crazy radical stock
until
market
you
thing.
believe that it
Hmm.
is.
Yep. So some would say, who wants that, right?
Really?
Some might say that. Some might say that that's boring.
Why?
There's you have to experience both ends of it to figure out
Sure.
which one is which and why you'd want one or the other. And how do you do that? Through meditation.
Simple answers here.
It's always the same thing.
Lots of complex ideas and structures and analogies and thoughts, but they're not really thoughts. But it's very simple.
There's there's a okay. There's a lot of information out there, right? There's a supermind, a Christ consciousness,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
A true record of all things, not a false record, a true record
Yep, it's
of the
real.
exact things
It's in
that have
reality.
transpired. Not a preferred variant that I've colored based upon my egoic preferences. There's truth out there.
Wow.
Okay? We can access that truth, right? It's not how do I own it, how do I stuff it in my mind, right? I say wipe it clear. Wipe
Yep.
the mind clear because your mind isn't an ownership vessel.
Because you can read anything and find the truth in it if you can wipe the mind clear.
The only thing the thing that you read will do is to point you to the truth that's inside of you,
Yeah.
right?
It can be the most backwards ass religion book text that says you should do crazy rituals or what have you, and you can see the truth in that. It's all about how you perceive it. It's not so much the external reality. Would you agree with that?
I think what you're saying is like if we inadvertently judge another say culture's
Find the separation in it.
exactly and look for the separation and call it like weird, right?
Yes.
Then we're looking at weird. We're not looking at the truth of why it's similar to the thing.
I see a lot of that. I see a lot of that go on.
It's
You know,
pretty
we
much a
try to
part of that.
Americanize everything, right? And I see it in yoga. I see it in looking at Eastern philosophies and what we like to just kind of wrap it up. Eastern mysticism.
Well, hatha yoga and whatnot typically won't get too deep into real effective stuff. You know what I mean? Here's the thing. We've talked about this before.
Sure,
If you
it was my pathway, right? It was my
It's your pathway, exactly, right? But and everybody's got a different pathway, right? And just embrace your unfoldment, your story, your hero's journey,
definitely
right? But because it was right for you doesn't mean it's right for everybody.
correct.
But it is definitely a way. But if you understand the essence of that way that you traveled, then you can see the essence in ways that others are
The
traveling.
underlying.
Exactly. The underlying thematic, the underlying theme, as Rush says in Tom Sawyer.
So, would you have a recommendation for where people should start?
Meditation, stillness. The first thing to do, see, people make meditation complicated, right? Or they say, my favorite is, I don't have time. You don't have time not to meditate, right? Because if you're sitting there as a factory, right? Say you're a being and your being is a factory that produces thoughts and ideas that emanate out into reality,
Yeah,
and those emanations are coming back to you as boomerangs,
yeah,
and you don't like them, okay? You don't have time not to you don't have time not to stop
yeah.
and be still to look at what you're producing, to undo those things and stop that crazy factory that's churning out those karmic
And is
boomerangs.
also consuming.
It'll destroy. I mean, just look around. Look at individuals that are falling apart. You know, there is a system that happens here in materiality, and you will pay a price if you don't handle your business.
So, what has meditation done for you?
It's allowed me to live in peace, relative peace. Meditation has offered in meditation. Let's just take it out of meditation and take it to what I found in meditation, which is the ultimate, which is the higher being, which is Christ consciousness, right? A higher understanding that shields one, right, from the the insanity of what's going on out there. How? You're still immersed in it, but you understand truth, right? And you're fearless. And as such, you can live an enjoyable, peaceful existence because you're no longer at wit's end, sitting at the edge of your seat, freaking out about every little thing that might or might not happen. Instead, you're living and enjoying life, right? What's going to happen tomorrow? Don't know, doesn't matter.
It's not that you don't care.
It's not that I don't care, it's just that it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this leads to another aspect, which is, you know, sometimes there can be those who practice these things that release that take no responsibility, right? They say, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, and they don't get involved in manifestation, right? They say, I'm going to be taken care of constantly. Well, the essence of that is the Lord helps those who help themselves. So by right thinking, by right willing, by right meditation, you can create your days to follow. You loosely create your days to follow, so that reality conforms to your will, to your heart's desire, right? Not to your mind's desire. but to your true heart's desire. So you get in touch with your heart's desire, and the universe feeds back those things of your heart's desire. So that's why the meditation and the focus thereupon of drilling into what are my true heart's desires right now. You know, do I have inappropriate desires that are not, leading me where I want to go?
They're not serving the greater good.
They're not serving the greater good. They're not serving others. They're self-serving. They're selfish.
And
Let me
temporary.
remove temporary selfish desires for long-term beneficial universal desires. Mm-hmm.
Seems pretty legit. Makes me think of all the sayings, right? Living the dream.
It's the truth of living the
No
dream.
doubt.
No.
Right? What goes around comes around, bro. I'm a
Yeah.
free spirit.
So you can take any one of those things,
Yeah.
right? And instead of just off the cuffing it in material reality, you could take it into meditation and sit with it and understand the truth of
Seriously.
it and unlock some reality there.
Righteous.
Yeah, totally righteous in
Right?
the most divine of senses.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we say that stuff very casually
Mm-hmm.
without understanding it.
Yeah,
to
well, we
its
fling
fullest
around words, right? And
Yeah.
and the word is creation, right? Thoughts are creations, and the word is a more powerful variant of those thoughts.
And then acting.
And action is a more powerful variant of that. So we have the 3 tiers of creation that the magician uses to create reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the being that has understanding, and even the being that doesn't have understanding creates reality, just is doing it willy-nilly and doesn't have any doggone idea what they're doing. Thinking thoughts that are not helping them, and not that, and they wonder why they keep having these things that happen in life. It's thoughts that keep going through one's mind, and then inappropriate words that are coming out that are not leading one down the path that they choose, but into old patterns that are adopted maybe from nature, nurture scenarios and parental things or whatever, that inadvertently got into the being or were indoctrinated that don't really belong.
Yeah. It happens almost naturally nowadays. Right? When does the ego begin? I guess would be the question to that.
Perhaps a time without a beginning.
I suppose, but I mean, in one lifetime, like, how does the ego develop?
So how it develops is a good question. How it begins, who knows when it really
Yeah.
begins. But
When does it begin to develop?
right, right. So we as soon as we the first technically it begins with the first idea that there's something outside of me.
Right. Because I just watched a lot of kids, and they're just so
They don't
so
know.
free.
They don't know.
They're free.
That's Christ says, think ye like a little child. Because a child doesn't say that's something outside of me, because that's when difference comes into place. Me, that, different. We're
Yeah.
not the same, right? So a child, I'm beginning to think about times back when I was a child, when I looked outside, looked through my eyes, and didn't see something other than me.
Wow. Right. And
What am I looking at? I'm looking at me.
right. Well, you're creating this reality with
Exactly.
your sense organs.
Mm-hmm.
Right. As we speak, your eyes, your ears, your smell is creating all of this, and it's all fed through your mind.
Those senses are experiencing the self.
Yeah.
Those senses are there to tell you about you,
Bottom line.
to allow you to look into you, to take the outside information, to use it internally, to decide if you want to evolve yourself, to move from version 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, whether it's in one lifetime or through a series of lifetimes.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an easy illusion to fall into, to getting attached to
Clearly,
the external.
exactly. It's part of our current paradigm. There's an in here and an out there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And it's right here, right now. But as a kid, you develop that ego, and then it typically leads to a reawakening. Right?
If you're lucky in your life, it leads to a reawakening. I don't.
Or if you're more lucky, there's just awakening at birth, straight through. But that's very,
There's descriptions
rare.
of where beings are in terms of their evolution, their amplitude when they come in.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big topic
Sure.
and highly speculatory,
Sure.
if even that's a word.
Sure. And there have been, say, prophets who have been at a high amplitude right away,
Yeah,
like Christ,
yeah,
Mohammed,
yeah,
Buddha,
yeah.
Gandhi.
Why not?
Sure.
These are beings that transcended themselves and sacrificed themselves to the higher mind, to the higher being, and said, I work in the service of all and not in the service of myself.
Almost right off the bat.
I don't know when everybody did these things. I mean, there's descriptions in Christianity of Christ's time in the wilderness and at the time he started, preaching and whatnot. And I think generally speaking, an individual goes and gathers some experiences, right, that they can process, that assist them in making that decision, that determination into there's something more here.
Right. So it sounds like it's time for a reawakening
As
as a whole.
in terms of humanity, we could sure use some help right about now. We could sure use a lot less people thinking about their desires and getting in touch with the truth so that they can become the highest version of themselves and serve humanity at a time when it's needed more perhaps than ever.
I think we should leave it at that.
Alrighty.
Did an hour.
All right.
Until next time, guys. Ride the waves, dude.
Ciao.